Thanks everybody for coming out here on Monday morning. Appreciate it. Obviously, we're here to welcome Chris Woodward as our new manager of the Texas Rangers. Very excited about that. And before I get into our thoughts and how we got here today, I want to recognize and welcome Chris's wife, Erin, and his kids, Sophie, Mason, and Grady. So welcome to the Rangers family. Happy to have you. See, how did we get here today? This was a really thorough process on the part of a lot of people here with the Rangers. We met with or spoke with by phone, I think about 15 candidates, some really qualified baseball people around the game, and I want to thank each of them for their time and energy. We had a small search committee, a number of us, and then a larger interview group. I don't know the exact number. I think Chris probably met with or touched base with 24 people here with the Rangers before we hired him, before we offered him the job. Part of that was to get a range of perspectives. I think everybody brings a little something different to the table, whether you work in scouting or the front office or the clubhouse. I think certainly the clubhouse folks' perspective on interpersonal skills and how that plays in today's game is huge. But part of it, maybe more importantly, was to establish, not just with Chris, but with all the candidates, who we are as a group. I think we were certainly interviewing him, but in some ways wanted to sell ourselves, what we're about, the type of culture, the type of people that we are, and that all of these people in our organization, that they're important to us and important to what we're building. Chris really stood out to us in two major areas. First and foremost, just his interpersonal and leadership skills, and some specifics there. Just extremely bright, very high energy. You could see that in the third base coach's box, but you could really see that when you sit down and see what he's passionate about. He's got an outstanding reputation as a communicator and a good listener, a selfless leader with minimal ego, just very consistent in day-to-day who he is as a man, and he's got empathy and respect for all. So all traits that we set out looking for at the beginning, and very confident and comfortable as we got through it and knowing Chris there. And then secondly, I think he brings a really unique understanding of the game, developing strategies, how to use data and probabilities in making decisions, but also understand the role that plays with blending those elements with the feel for players and what drives them. That was a really good balance and kind of how he talked about wanting to implement strategies over the course of a season. A lot of these are hard traits to really determine in an interview process, right? You sit down with somebody in basically a boardroom type setting when they're never going to be there again. They're going to be out in the field. So really we relied more on work that we did behind the scenes. So our support staff, everybody called their counterparts, and Chris got really strong reviews across the board from trainers and strength coaches, administrative support staff, everybody that he touched base with. And most importantly, many players. His reputation as a guy who treats people with respect, whether the cameras are on or not, really stood out to us. We're building something here that we're very excited about. We know our fans are going to be proud of. We've got a young position player core. We've got a wave of young talent coming up through the system, a lot of pitching in that group. We've got a number of new faces and perspectives now in the front office to help guide us in decision-making, a state-of-the-art ballpark that's a year away, and now an energetic, winning manager to help us drive the culture here at the Major League level. We're all going to grow together. We're all going to win together. And we're very excited to have Chris lead us on the field. I'd like to bring up Chris Woodward here to say a few things.
Thank you, Jeff. Got my notes. Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Obviously very excited about this opportunity. Got to reach out, obviously, to the Texas Rangers organization, the ownership, Ray Davis, Bob Simpson, Neil Levin. Thank you. We're super excited to be here. Jon Daniels, can't say enough about the man. We've had many conversations over the last little while, and thank you for bringing me on board. And the front office, everybody responsible. The interview process that I went through, with meeting everybody in the organization was fantastic. And getting to know everybody here, I can tell they value the same things I value. They're good people, and I look forward to it. Obviously, got to thank my family over here for joining me, my wife Erin and my kids, Sophie, Mason, Grady. We've been through quite a bit as a family over the years. Anybody that's played this game or coached in this game knows how hard it is on family, and they've been my bedrock. My wife is the smartest, strongest person I know, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her. I owe everything, who I am, and we share very common values in life and what we value in people and the way we treat people, and it means obviously everything to have you here. And I don't want to get too emotional about it, but it is very, very impactful, and the support I've received over the last couple of days has been overwhelming. I got, I don't know how many text messages, 300, 400, I don't know how many, I can't even count. But just people reaching out, and all the people that I've tried to reach out to over the years, coming back full circle and just expressing their support for me, which has been super meaningful, and I can't thank them enough. Getting to obviously the job at hand, we got a lot of work to do here, and I'm really excited about the opportunity. I look at this team, just the roster that's in front of us, the young core of people here. Really excited. Obviously, talking to JD about the prospects here. It's a tremendous opportunity for anybody, but excited that he picked me for the job, and I can't wait to lead this group. I'm very passionate about pushing this team forward. I think you're going to hear a lot of words that I'll use over the course of this season. Growth being one of them, getting better, improving. These are all words that I want to make sure our players understand as they move forward, that this is what we're going to try to accomplish. When I talk about my philosophies bringing here, obviously positive philosophy is kind of a staple to me. I'm always positive. I'm always trying to push this thing forward. Not a lack of work. I don't want to, when you talk about being kind or being caring, it doesn't mean we're weak, obviously, as a leader. I believe in a lot of things of strong leadership, and getting these kids to buy into that, I think, is the most important. Building relationships with these players is critical. I think that's kind of what I believe in the strongest, is just getting to know these guys on a personal level and having them understand that we care. As a staff, my staff and I are going to give everything we have to these boys, and just make them into men, turn them into men, and create a culture here where they can flourish, where they can learn and grow every single day. And I think that's going to be what we place the most value on moving forward. When I think of how to accomplish that, process is a big one for me. I don't like to think of results. I think young kids, young players nowadays, they get caught up in results. They get caught up in how many home runs they hit, how many wins they have, and all these things are important. But I want to drive home the process that's going to get them the results. And we can dig a little deeper into that later, but I think it's really important that they buy into that message, because when they do, the results will come. And I think as a group of a team, when that is the talk that goes around the clubhouse, when you witness that on a daily basis, when guys are obsessed with getting better every day, and we have a staff that's positive and relentless in the pursuit of getting guys better, I think it really shows. And the guys will buy into that, and that's what's going to be the talk every day in the clubhouse. And I can't wait for that to happen. But it takes time. Every day, you got to earn their trust. And I think for me, that's the biggest thing, moving forward, is just gaining their trust. And gaining their trust just shows that you're there for them every day, through thick, through thin, through good and bad. And this is a hard game, and I understand that. You set forth expectations. My expectations are for this team to get better. I think you can't put a number on wins, losses, on how many home runs the team's going to hit, how many wins the pitching staff's going to have, what's the ERA. Those things are results of a process that we're going to put in place. So when I look towards the end here, we talk about this North Texas is hungry for a champion. Ideally, what we're putting in place here is the beginning of the foundation of a championship belief and culture. You don't have to, I don't know how many wins we're going to have this year, but that championship belief I believe is powerful and it's important to instill in these younger players now. So that way when the time comes, whether it's this year, hopefully, or whether it's next year or the year after, that foundation will be there. So when the most difficult times come, which, most Ranger fans know, I share a common bond with most Ranger fans right now. This has actually taken away the sting of losing 2 World Series in a row. And a lot of Ranger fans obviously I feel your pain. It's real. I get it. But the beautiful thing is I know how to get to the World Series. So I'm going to instill a philosophy and a belief and a process in place to get us to that point. And I look forward to meeting all our players. We got an energetic young group. Can't wait to, get to know them a little bit better. And, I've watched a lot of them from afar, watched a lot of them, on the Mariners side, and then this year playing you guys. So I'm really, really excited about the opportunity and can't wait to get started.
Awesome. Okay, we'll now to the jersey presentation.
All right.
John, both you and Chris in your opening statements used the word growth.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping both you guys could address a little bit about it. And from your perspective, John, what does growth mean for this team, and what does growth mean with a first-year manager who hasn't had any managerial experience before? Chris, kind of the same thing for you.
Well, first, from an organizational standpoint, certainly there's growth to be had on the major league side, but there's growth everywhere. Constantly reevaluating our processes and our people, and making sure that we're set up to make the best possible decisions through the draft, player development, R&D, and obviously down to the big league side. So, a lot of time this past month has been spent on identifying our major league manager, but also in hiring a new assistant GM, a new farm director, and reevaluating how we go about some things. So, really feel like, with the new ballpark, with the young core, with the young prospects that we're trying to develop, and now with Woody on board, critical time for us, but exciting time for us to try to get everything aligned and on the same path. On the big league side, growth come in a lot of different ways. So we have some young players that, just kind of started cutting their teeth, and we want to, get them, raise their level a bit. We have some young players like Odor and Joey Gallo that have shown what they're capable of, but maybe haven't gone wire to wire, full season. Can we get them to do that, and on down the line? So that's really what we're talking about. Growth it's a little bit everything. I think as what he mentioned, it's kind of the day-to-day process driven, a little bit better every day, getting guys to buy in, and we do that, good things are ahead.
Yeah, that's one word you're going to hear me use quite a bit. As a player and as a coach, I think the last little while, I really hammered our players on growth, because I think it doesn't matter if you're a young player or an older player with experience. Like, there's room for growth in everybody. So I'm going to grow. I expect to grow quite a bit, obviously never having managed at the big league level. I look forward to that, and I think that's going to kind of resonate with a lot of the younger players that are kind of in a similar boat. It'll help me just relate that message, like, hey, I'm growing right along with you. And I think when you challenge players, they're willing to accept that. These guys are, especially when they're young, they bring energy to the ballpark every day, and I think that's important for me, and the staff to just kind of be there for them every day. I think that's something that I've always done. I always swore I'd do as a coach. Now as a manager, I think it's a beautiful opportunity for me to just be that presence every day, that positive presence, and that guy that pushes them. We're going to have a great staff, a very smart, intelligent staff that can really challenge these guys on every level, whether it's and obviously hitting mechanics and the mental side of it, pitching mechanics, the pitching side of it. We're going to be an aggressive team, and all that kind of aligns. Like JD was saying, there's growth in every single area, and we want to acknowledge every single area that we can with every player. So whether it's a defensive, if a guy's struggling at the plate, whether it's his two-strike approach, all these things have room for growth. So I think I don't want to belabor the point, but it's something we're going to talk about quite a bit.
Mr. Woodward, whether it's opening day a year from now or 2 years from now, whatever, how do you want people to describe a baseball team that's managed by Chris Woodward?
Good question. So on the field, when you watch our team play on the field, you should witness a team that's aggressive, that's passionate, that plays with energy, that doesn't take anything for granted, that plays every pitch to win. That's what I said. When you talk about expectations, my expectation is for every single player on every single pitch to be prepared, to play hard, to give it everything they have, and on top of that, the fan base or whoever's watching our team should be able to understand what they're doing off the field, because that's where the growth and all the processes we're talking about happen. We're going to have a great coaching staff, like I said, that's going to push them off the field. So in their batting practice and everything that they do, there's going to be a purpose. And when they show up on the field, it should be a fun team to watch. It's going to be an exciting team to watch.
Chris, you're not that far removed from being a player, obviously, in this game. So how much does that help? And in your time with Dave Roberts, who kind of had made that transition, what did you learn from him that you can take into this role?
I think it helps a lot being a player not too far removed. I think 2012 was obviously my last year. And when you play the game a certain way, I don't like to talk about my own career, but I fought every day. And I think that's why this moment is so special for me, because when you go through a career like I did, not a great player, very average, probably below average, and you fight every day just, for that. You bring that as a coach, so you bring that energy as a coach, and I think that's really important to relate to those players. They feel your energy, they feel your youth, and I see Doc. Obviously, Doc's a very positive guy, in LA, and we got along great. We were very similar, in a lot of ways. Different, but similar. Our energy was the same every day. We felt like it was our duty to bring that positive energy every day, just to give to the players, to have them feed off of us.
Chris, there's a bit of a trend in baseball to kind of get the younger blood in the managerial roles, maybe more of, I guess, a quote-unquote players manager. How do you balance having guys' backs, per se, with avoiding coddling them as well? It's
a great question. I think that's where a lot of people in the game now, they see these, younger managers like, oh, they're just going to do everything for the player. And then, the front office will tell them what to do. And you hear that a lot. I think it's really important to I've always kept a boundary between my players. I'm really, I have a really special relationship with former players that I've coached in Seattle and now in LA. There was honestly, I can say there was some tears shed, when I knew I was leaving. And that doesn't mean we're best friends, or that doesn't mean I did anything to make them promises. I'm going to be honest with players, and I think that's really important. We're going to have a relationship. I want to know these guys intimately. I want to know who they are, because I know JD, talking to him, he sets the bar high. And I know I've talked to a few of our ownership. They set the bar really high, and I plan on setting that bar high in who we are as people. And I think that's really important to send that to the players, so that when we do have these relationships, yes, they may seem that we're, pretty intimate and we're tight, and I really get to know them, but there's still a boundary. I'm still their manager, and even as a coach in LA and in Seattle, I maintain that, even while having a really kind of a deep personal relationship with certain players. And I think it's healthy. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I know people have told me throughout my career, you can't be too close to a player; they'll let you down. And I couldn't disagree more, because I think that bond kind of helps you push them through certain times. This game's a hard game, and I understand that. I had a lot of difficulty playing this game at this level, and so it's really for me to help them understand that, and maybe give them a little bit of advice. They kind of feel the humility of the game. They feel the vulnerability of how difficult this game is. I think players buy into that a lot. And my goal, honestly, it's nothing about me. My goal is to make our players better. and our players champions. It has nothing to do with me. I know JD and I have talked about this, and that's where the ego leaves the room. And I think that our staff will be egoless. I want our players to be egoless. So when they go out there, they play together. They play for each other. They play for the Texas Rangers. And that's important for them to feel that bond so they get through those difficult times.
Jon, you mentioned Chris had a unique understanding of the game. Can you just expand on what you mean? Is that in-game philosophy? Is it using advanced stats or whatnot?
Yeah, in part. Certainly in part. I mean, I think he's been exposed to one of the more forward-thinking organizations with the Dodgers and been a part of developing some of the processes that they've used. But I think just in talking with Chris, I mean, there's a clear understanding. Listen, he talked about what he was as a player. Maybe not the most talented guy, but had a long big league career, right? Well, sorry, old scouting report, but he talked about like how hard he worked and like the little advantages that he had to look for as a player, and then to give those to his players. So some of that is on the data side, right? But a lot of that is just in kind of fine-tuning techniques, and he talked about some of his beliefs in pregame work and how to do things maybe a little bit differently, and how to do things ultimately to individualize to the player to get the most out of their ability, put them in the best position to succeed. And there's a blend there. There's understanding some of the information, being open to the information, understand how to explain it to the players, but then still going out and letting the relationship and ultimately the work take its course.
Jon, did Michael Young have a significant amount of influence on either scouting Chris or any kind of background on this particular decision, given his relationship with him?
Yeah, Michael was involved in the whole interview process, both with Chris and everybody else. Obviously, that they've known each other for a long time, growing up and having been around each other and played with each other in youth baseball and in California. So there was certainly an element there that Michael was able to help us fill in some of the gaps. Right, I think that's a big part of hiring anybody. You're trying to understand more than just what you get in a couple days of conversations, and the fact that Michael knew him on a personal level and knew what he was about, and has kind of seen his growth as a person, it certainly helped us kind of put the whole picture together.
Chris, what would you say are your primary assets to be a major league manager?
So obviously playing this game for a long time and coaching over the last 6 years has given me a lot of, understanding of how the game is played, and being in a forward-thinking organization in LA obviously caught me up to speed in the new ways of baseball, and heavy analytics, and all those things obviously give me a better understanding of how to make decisions. Now you put yourself in in any manager's shoes at any time, but when you're exposed to those things on a daily basis and exposed to the decision-making process, you sit in meetings, you sit in I sit in Doc's office, I sat in McClendon's office, as a coach, and then understanding the new age players. Players are different than when I came up. It's just every generation, I guess, is different. So really understanding what makes them tick and how to make them better, and how to be a leader in a clubhouse like that. I think those are all things that lead you to the ability to to be able to manage a major league team. I'm witness to so many things, and when you're open to what's around you on a consistent basis, I was very open as a player I played for 11 different managers as a major leaguer, 8 different first-year managers, so I've been exposed to a lot of things that they went through that maybe that were their shortcomings or were the positives. So I played for Bobby Cox, so I played for obviously one of the best managers of all time. So I just take those things. I was very aware of all of that, and obviously I try to grow every year, try to learn every day something. Obviously getting ready for this experience, interviewing with the Yankees last year really kind of fast forwarded that process for me, and learning all the managerial things that I'm going to have to, learn on the job. I managed a New Zealand team in 2016. That, obviously it's not the major leagues, but there was a lot of things that you had to do there in a short amount of time when it comes to the pitching staff, when it comes to the bullpen. I think those things are invaluable to gaining your experience to get yourself ready.
Chris, obviously, Thursday today has been quite a whirlwind, but I'm assuming at some point in time you've had a chance to talk with Doc a little bit. Has he given you any kind of advice about, the task that's at hand? You go from a base coach into the manager's job, and so much changes about that, especially how you manage time. What have those conversations been like? If you've had them?
Yeah, I've reached out. Obviously, we've communicated all year because when I interviewed last year, I called him right away. I called a lot of different people just to get their opinions on things, and a lot of people's advice, honestly, was, and JD actually hit on this, during the interview process. Don't be afraid to use the people around you. I don't plan on knowing everything. I don't know everything. There's a lot to learn in the job, and I expect fully to use the staff around me. I tend to lean on, people around me. I'll talk to JD, obviously, and get his input on anything that can help me. So I plan on reaching out to a lot of different people and, not afraid to ask for help when I need it.
You've heard the question about what do you think your biggest assets are, and then you talk about asking for help. What do you foresee being some of your challenges that you're looking forward to facing? Like, hey, I'm a first-year manager. This is the first time I've done this. Here's some things I'm going to really need to.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're in the driver's or you're in the captain's seat, like, all eyes are on you, and I accept that because I actually enjoy that part of it. I enjoy setting a high standard, in the clubhouse, just talking to people. That part of it I really enjoy. I think, dealing with the criticism, something. I was never a great player, and I was never, as a third base coach, you don't have to deal with, even if I got a guy thrown out of home, I typically didn't have to answer to the media after. Only maybe one or two guys would come up, hey, what do you think about that send last night? I thought it was the right move, and that was it. So, becoming involved with that. But I think when you base your decisions on information and you have a sound judgment to why you're doing things, I think it's a little easier to explain in the end. So, you stand behind who you are, and, obviously, you gain respect. Sometimes you're not going to please everybody, in that clubhouse. If I have to sit a player or, dealing with that, I think that's where the communication comes in. I have to communicate with, everybody on a constant basis and, make sure players understand where I'm coming from. Like I said, I'm not going to please all the players. I'm not going to please all the staff at times. I believe in criticism. I've talked to JD about that. I don't want a clubhouse of complainers and excuse makers. I want a clubhouse full of problem solvers. I think that's really, really important moving forward, especially with a young team. It's easy for young guys to kind of complain and, about things, about processes, and instead of coming up with solutions for those processes.
First of all, Mr. Woodward, welcome to North Texas. JD mentioned earlier about the new state-of-the-art stadium that will open in 2020. You played in Toronto in artificial turf. My question to you is, will you lobby your new bosses as to what kind of turf to use in the new stadium?
I'm not really involved in that at the moment. I'm sure we'll have discussions. I'll obviously weigh my opinion on that when it comes, but right now I'm just excited about the ballpark. For next year. I've seen all the the outlining of it, and it's a pretty amazing facility, and look forward to getting in there next year.
When all the press conferences are over, the bottom line is the Rangers want to win a World Series. They expect to win a World Series, and they're counting on you to be the manager who takes them to the World Series. How do you feel about that?
I love that. I embrace expectations. You'll hear me say that a lot with our players. I want our players to have expectations of winning a World Series. Like I said, you have to establish that belief now. It doesn't mean we can't win the World Series this year. I'm not saying that's going to happen. But I want our players to have that belief inside them that everything that they do on a daily basis is geared toward winning a World Series. I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to have high expectations. So what if we fail? So what if we fall short? I was a part of a team the last 2 years that fell short, but our processes and everything were geared towards winning a World Series. So I don't care that, people may say we're not going to win the World Series. That's fine with me. I'm going to always instill that belief in our players every day.
You talked about your staff and what you want out of that staff. Do you have one in mind already? Are you close to naming anybody? And is anybody who's on staff now?
Yeah, we have some people. We're obviously discussing that. It's obviously a point of, concern right now. We need to address that because, we need to fill out our staff. Now we have a couple people that we're going to keep. I guess we'll let those come out when we decide fully, but. We have a lot of names we're looking at for different positions, and we're going to get right on it really soon.
What else, Stephen?
We heard JD, obviously your relationship with Michael Young. Can you kind of talk about where that goes and how long did you have actually known him? And also another Rangers favorite you've had a connection with is Adrian Beltre, who you filled in for a little bit during the season you were in Seattle. Just talk about that a little bit. Would you try to get him to come back?
Yeah, Adrian's one of the finest people I've ever played with. He was, I played with him in Seattle, and he wasn't very good that year. He was hurt, but he would have never told you. I'm pretty sure he had a torn labrum in his shoulder or something, but remarkable human being, obviously tremendous leader, leaves it all on the field. So we'll discuss that when it happens. I'm not sure if he's going to play or not, but I'm sure JD will hit more on that. But Michael Young, Michael and I grew up in Covina. Ever since I was little, he was, don't tell him I said this, but he was the best player that I've ever seen at that age. All the way, he actually grew up, at one point I moved within 5 houses away from him. So it was pretty amazing that we both got drafted by the Blue Jays, and then now we're both working for Texas. Obviously he had a much better career than I did in the major leagues, but I did make it to the major leagues before he did. So that is something that I've mentioned to him many times, because he was at a level as a younger player that none of us had ever seen. He was and he was about my size, so it wasn't like he was a bigger guy or anything, but just tremendous talent. And then to hear his contributions here, I wasn't surprised how good of a player he became. But to hear the impact he had on this organization, didn't surprise me at all, but really kind of made me happy because, talk about a tremendous human being. He gave everything he had to this team. Every player that I know that played with him or that was a part of those teams with him just had nothing but good things to say about him. And he said he was the best teammate, great leader, just inspiring guy to have around.
Hey, Chris, you mentioned forward thinking in relation to the Dodgers. JD mentioned forward thinking in relation to the Dodgers. Everybody's got information. What did you guys with the Dodgers do in terms of being able to relate that information? How did you apply that information to get success out of it?
Great question. I think that's the desire of every organization right now. There's so much information out there now. I thought we did a great job in LA. I think we can do it better here. I don't want to take anything away from what the Dodgers are doing because they're tremendous. They're very, like I said, they try to gain every advantage possible based on the information available. And I think that, with a young group of players, getting the buy-in from the players is the most difficult thing. And I think that's what separates the teams that do it well. A lot of teams they don't really know maybe what it is that gives them an advantage. So they have all these numbers and they have all these things that they just, they throw out there. They shift guys that they shouldn't. They pitch guys a certain way that they shouldn't. So, I think that's up to us as a staff. And obviously JD and I are going to sit down with our analytic group and really kind of hammer out what it is we value and how we're going to create numbers to give us value. I think there's a lot of other things, outside of results-based numbers, which can really benefit our younger players when we talk about growth. So when I talk about quality at bat, it doesn't necessarily mean the guy got a hit. I think that's where the new numbers, the StatCast data, the TrackMan data, all these things can measure our players in a better way to prove it's more about the process than it is than the actual result. So if Rougned Odor has a great at bat or has a great game but he's 0 for 3 with a walk, I can tell him after the game, you stuck to your process. You did everything possible. You stayed in the strike zone. You got your swing off on the pitches you were supposed to. You took a couple pitches that were borderline. You've done everything we asked. It's a hard game. Just because you swung at strikes doesn't mean you're going to get a hit every time. You hit a ball 110 miles an hour to the center fielder with the bases loaded. There's nothing more you can do. You should sleep like a baby tonight. I think those messages are important to our younger players to create the buy-in. So if we can create a culture where they're not obsessed with results, we're going to win a lot of games. And I said this in LA, and I really want to hammer this here, that if, I don't know if JD would buy into this, but if you can pay players based on outcomes and not results, you'll get better players. So why not create a culture based on outcomes and not results? I think that's important.
Other questions, TR?
Michael has, over the years, shared with all of us his background in Covina and his humble background in his father. And I'm just curious, what was your background in Covina with your family and what that did for you as far as getting you to where you are today?
Good question. Man, it's a long journey. I was just a humble kid. I was, baseball was something that I loved. I loved all sports, but baseball was one thing that, was a common bond. There was a group of us that, played together. Michael Young was not part of that. He was in the elite group. He stayed away from the Covina side. He's actually played for West Covina. Don't let him fool you. But our little group of players, we played wiffle ball every day. Baseball was something that was just a dream for me as a kid. I always dreamed about playing in the big leagues and, hitting in the bottom of the ninth with full count, 2 outs, bases loaded. So all those things, I was a normal kid. And it didn't really, professional baseball didn't even really become an option until probably my junior year in high school. I mean, I was like 5'4" my sophomore year, 5'11" my junior year. So immediately, like, all of a sudden, scouts were like, oh, he's tall enough now. Before there was no way. And I know Dustin Pedroia is a great player, but I wasn't as good as Dustin Pedroia. So all those things kind of happened quickly. And so my junior year in high school was important to me. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be an architect. Those things were everything to me. And all of a sudden, baseball became an option. So it kind of, overwhelmed me a little bit in my senior year. Had a good year. Got drafted, which was, probably a moment like this where you're just, kind of overwhelmed by the moment. And I didn't think I was going to get drafted. I didn't even think I was potential to play professionally, let alone in the big league. So once I actually signed professionally, to get into the professional baseball, it all became about heart and desire. And, it was amazing how much if you put your mind to something, you just dedicate yourself to a craft, how much better you can get on a daily basis. And I think that's obviously why I've had so much success in relating with players, because it didn't come easy for me. And I know a lot of these players, they're a lot better than I am, and I want to give them everything that I had and maybe keep them away from some of the pitfalls that I've seen other people go through.
Take a couple more. Anything? Ozzy? Just curious, has number 8 always been your number?
I'm glad you asked that question. I'm glad somebody did, because it's I don't want to get emotional about it, but growing up, I was a big Cal Ripken fan, obviously. So I wore number 8 until I got to the big leagues. I wore number 8 every year, all the way until and I obviously didn't wear it in the major leagues. It was somebody always had it, but my high school coach, who started coaching me when I was about 13, he was always number 8, and his favorite player growing up was Yogi Berra, big Yankee fan. So he would always have number 8, and I would wear number 8 on the same team. So he would be coaching third, as the manager, and I would be number 8 as the shortstop. He passed away this past season, and it was very emotional for me, because he took the role of many things for me. Obviously, as a mentor, as a father figure, he did everything for me. I mean, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. So to sit here and put this uniform on and have number 8 on my back for the first time in my major league career, it's pretty special for me, and obviously in honor of him. And like I said, it's a tremendous honor to put this on and know that he's watching upstairs. What's his name? Tom Quinner.
Anything else? TR, last one.
Okay, just one more. Sure. You were a 54th round pick. I was just curious if you had a chance to go to college, or I mean, normally 54-round picks do not,
No, they don't make it usually. Yeah.
or even they normally don't even sign. They normally go off
Yeah,
to.
they don't make it too far. They don't even have 54 rounds anymore, which is great. So that was my senior year. I got drafted, 54th round. Draft and follow back then was kind of a big deal, where they drafted and they have the rights to you the next year. So not knowing that I was going to get drafted was kind of a big. I didn't know what to do now because I wanted to go to be an engineer, and now baseball kind of stopped everything. The two schools that basically had a decent baseball program and the type of engineering program I wanted to go to were USC and Arizona State, and both of them were way too expensive for me. So I had to kind of make a decision at that point. So I talked to my scout, and he recommended that I go to junior college for 1 year to get some of my, my earlier classes out of the way. And then if things happen to work out baseball-wise, you could take it from there. So I went to junior college for 1 year at Mount San Antonio College, and led the state of California in hitting, where I was a good hitter in high school, but it was amazing what that year kind of changed in me physically and everything. And so I ended up signing before the draft, which was probably a financial mistake, but probably the best decision I ever made, because they treated me like a first rounder. They didn't treat me like a 54th rounder. I don't know what round I would have got drafted in, but I had a pretty good year there, and a lot of scouts, gave me their speculation. But everybody was surprised when I signed. I was like, listen, man, all I want to do is play baseball. Like, I'm not into this. I didn't know anybody that got drafted. I didn't really have anybody to help me. So it all works out. And I tell players that all the time. I said, the cream rises to the top. I've always said that to players. So guys that feel like they're getting, maybe the short end of the stick on a team, or they're not getting enough playing time, you just got to keep persevering. You keep doing things the right way, like, people notice, and you'll get your time. Yeah. They don't do it anymore, I don't think, but it was a big deal back then.